It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
Where do I start? Well, Donald Trump is definitely in the Epstein files. Elon Musk was right, although he has deleted those incriminating tweets. And Al-Qaeda and ISIS were in the White House. And Keir Starmer is in a whole lot of trouble, as predicted by me here on the mother of all talk shows. It's going to be that and more tonight. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Well, Donald Trump's second presidency is objectively now a dumpster fire, or a bin fire, as we say in Glasgow. Everything he's touching is turning to merd. It is a disaster. His attempt to undermine those trying to uncover the dirty secrets in the Epstein files have now well and truly catastrophically backfired. Having campaigned for the presidency on the promise of draining the swamp, he is now revealed in emails published today in the United States Congress, which reveal him up to his neck in the filth. No wonder once he got a look at them, once he actually saw what was in them, he about turned and decided that it was all a Democratic Party hoax. And the filthy paedophile, sex trafficker, Ghislaine Maxwell, well, she had to be sent to a federal holiday camp. She had to be given a companion dog. She had to be allowed to sew and have yoga classes all day in a federal penitentiary that would be the equivalent of some of the holidays I used to go on. No wonder he wished her well. No wonder he was worried, as Steve Bannon once revealed to Jeffrey Epstein in black and white today in the email trails. Bannon says to Epstein, you know, you were the only man I was afraid of in the 2016 election. And Epstein replied, as well you should have been. Now we know what they were all talking about. Now we know that Epstein to Maxwell says that the dog that hasn't barked is Donald Trump. And yet, says Epstein, he spent hours with redacted victim in my house. A house that Ghislaine Maxwell said Donald Trump never visited. Now, who was that victim? We would have all been none the wiser, except the White House has just confirmed that that victim was Victoria Giuffre. Now, what was he talking to her about for hours? Because he's claiming that he didn't do anything wrong with Virginia Giuffre. That means he was spending hours with her in Jeffrey Epstein's depraved mansion in New York City that he got for $1 from Leslie Wexner, about whom more later. What was he talking to Virginia Giuffre about? I got confused with Victoria because, of course, Wexner is the founder of Victoria's Secrets. In fact, underwear, lingerie, and models loom very large in this filthy scandal. Now, all of it would just be a sex scandal if it were not for the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a Mossad agent. Would just be an ordinary, if particularly filthy, sex scandal if it were not for the fact that the partner in crime of Jeffrey Epstein was the multiple-time Israeli minister, twice Israeli prime minister, and former head of the Mossad, Ehud Barak. You see, this whole thing was built on the predilections of dirty men in the American political class and journalistic class. Michael Wolff, the biographer of Donald Trump, is now in deep trouble also as a result of the emails released today by the American Congress. He's revealed as the life coach to Jeffrey Epstein after he had been convicted for sex crimes with a minor. He is revealed, Michael Wolff is revealed in these emails to be giving advice to Jeffrey Epstein about how effectively he could blackmail, leverage his knowledge about Donald Trump to his advantage, with a view, presumably, to leniency of the kind later shown to Ghislaine Maxwell. It would ordinarily be just a story about perverts in the political and journalistic class. But because we now know that absolutely, undeniably, irrefutably, Epstein was working for Israel, that opens up, if you like, a new seam, which I now propose to mine. You see, Donald Trump told the audience in Dearborn, Michigan, on the night before polling day, last November, when he won his second presidential term, that he was going to bring peace to Gaza. He was going to stop the catastrophe in Gaza. He was going to stop that war like the other 8, 10, 11 wars that he has subsequently stopped, particularly the one between Albania and Armenia. He said to the audience and to the voters in the state of Michigan at a time when he thought that state was going to be decisive the next day, that he was going to rein in Netanyahu. Of course, once he got in, he preferred to obey the orders of Miriam Adelson and the other pro-Israel donors that had given him hundreds of millions of dollars. His promises to the Michigan audience were soon forgotten. And he then allowed Netanyahu to literally continue committing genocide. He's even written this day to the president of Israel demanding a pardon for Benjamin Netanyahu embroiled in a corruption case in his own country under his own judicial system on White House notepaper with that familiar signature last seen in a birthday card to Jeffrey Epstein, in which he talks about our little secret, and the signature is written where a woman's pubic hair would be. He has been the best friend that Israel has ever had in the White House, as he himself repeatedly boasts. So you've got to ask, are these two things connected? Is the compromat that Epstein had on Trump, which so terrified Steve Bannon, as well it should have, said Epstein, is that connected to the complete volte-face, about turn, not an Anna Baerbock 360 degrees, but definitely a 180. Trump bankrolled, armed, and diplomatically shilled for, vetoed for, over and over again, the mass slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people in Gaza, mainly women and children. And I repeat what I said instinctively right at the beginning of this imbroglio. Trump did not know how exposed he was in the Epstein files until Benjamin Netanyahu told him on that first visit to the White House after Trump's re-election. You know, the one where Trump, like a waiter, pulled out and then pushed in the chair for Netanyahu to sit on. It is an affair that, if you'll forgive the pun, has legs, long, long legs. Like Trump's legs, posing on that bed in a shishi dressing gown, at least 1980s shishi. Trump in the dressing gown, in a portrait which was hung in the New York City mansion of Jeffrey Epstein, where we now know Trump spent hours with Virginia Giuffre discussing, I don't know, peace in the Middle East, the public sector borrowing requirement in Peru, climate change. Who knows what he was discussing for hours with the child sex victim Virginia Giuffre, now departed in very murky and mysterious circumstances indeed. If this was the only issue today, I'd spend my whole 20 minutes talking about it. But there's at least two others. They told you that this joker, Mamdani, a pro-LGBTQ plus vegetarian liberal, woke, fanatic, hippie, was a jihadist. They told you that Mamdani would introduce Sharia law. They told you that this liberal, Mamdani, was a clear and present danger to the United States, that he represented some kind of Islamist revanchism. And the same people that told you that invited to the White House by the back door. At least they had the grace to be embarrassed about it. The man who was the deputy leader of alqaeda before he became the deputy leader of ISIS. The man who, not 1 year ago, when Trump first became president, had a $10 million reward for his arrest in a poster on the website of the U.S. Embassy in Damascus, of the State Department. Yes, that's him. Behind me. Could be dangerous. They were going to give you $10 million not 1 year ago if you could give them information that would lead to his arrest or his killing. And now Donald Trump is spraying Trump perfume about his neck in the Oval Office of the White House, telling us how handsome he is, telling us he's a young man that had a rough past. We've all had a rough past, he said. Well, we now know more about your rough past, Donald Trump. But most of us have never cut people's heads off. Most of us have never cut people's throats. Most of us have never eaten people's hearts, having cut open their chests in order to devour them. Most of us have never been the deputy leader of an organization that decapitated Americans, British, as well as uncountable numbers of Arabs across the Middle East. Most of us have never had that kind of rough past. You hypocrites, not just the political hypocrites, we're used to that. You media hypocrites who haven't even pointed out what I have just said. You hypocrites that interviewed Giuliani of ISIS and Al-Qaeda in New York and didn't even press him on his statement on television that when 9/11 happened in that very city, all of us were happy. That's what he said. I'd be lying, he said, if I claimed that when it happened we were not all happy. The journalists, the broadcasters, performed a snow job, practically a blow job, on the deputy leader of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, whilst slandering Mandani as if he was the ISIS Al-Qaeda guy rather than that idiot, not the one sitting down, the one standing up, who was given a tour of the Lincoln bedroom. Trump asked him how many wives he had. As he sprayed the perfume, he gave another one. I've never smelt Trump perfume, but I'm going to hazard a guess that it is cheap and trashy. Just like what he's done to the ballroom, just like what he's done to the Oval Office itself. Anyway, he hands him a bottle of perfume and says, "That's for your wife. How many wives have you got?" Giuliani says, "Just one." Trump says, "I never know with you guys." Giuliani could have countered, "How come you're so against immigrants when you married two of them? One of them on a visa as a model and have had children with both of them. What have you got against immigrants? Is it only the ones with the nice cheekbones that you want to keep in the United States?" It was a Benny Hill farce conducted by a president of the United States of America that is roaming around the world, threatening wars, making wars, sanctioning, tariffing, throwing his weight around like a bull in a china shop. Although a bull has rather bigger hands, if you get my drift. This man is a clear and present danger to the Republic. Yes, That's their business. He's a clear and present danger to the world. That is our business. Now, I've only got time to deal with one other issue, but it's so hilarious, I can't pass up the opportunity. I told you here months ago that Keir Starmer will be lucky to be Prime Minister by Christmas, and he will definitely not be Prime Minister the day after the next local elections and the elections to the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly. Well, it looks like I'm turning out to have predicted correctly again. Call me Nostradamus. I knew that this robot would take Labour to its lowest ever ebb since the day and hour that it was founded, and he has. This Prime Minister, just over a year in office, has lost half of all the people who voted for him in July of last year. This Prime Minister, whose country is visibly, is discernibly, you can smell the decline in this country. You can smell the despair amongst the population. Britain feels like today what it felt like in the depth of the COVID crisis, when we were locked down, wearing masks, crossing the road to avoid each other, when you couldn't hug your granny or attend the funeral of your late father. That's what Britain is like today, under him, Starmer, the man who nonetheless is shelling out billions to little Zelensky, the crook, who the Spectator magazine on its front page has just declared is about to fall as a result of myriad corruption scandals involving hundreds of millions of dollars, euros, and pounds. Anyway, I even gave you the name of his challenger, a little runt called Wesley Streeting, and he is as he sounds. He's the Blair man. Boy, really. He's been groomed, if you'll forgive the pun, by Peter Mandelson and Tony Blair for years to be the next Labour leader. And he's begun to make his move. Sufficiently, obviously, that Starmer briefed the British media that this Streeting was a traitor to the cause and was plotting to overthrow him. Starmer's people say, well, we were trying to smoke him out. But in fact, they've merely set fire to the prime ministership of Keir Starmer himself, because the response in the country to the possibility that Starmer might be deposed was hallelujah, and nation rejoices. We don't care how bad Streeting is. We'll take anybody other than Keir Starmer. As Oscar Wilde said on the death scene in Charles Dickens' Little Nell, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to laugh. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. We have to rage against the dying of this light. Many of you, I know you're saying it already, there was never much light, that England was not the green and pleasant land you are making it out to be, and we never were free, and we never were a democratic country, and so on. Of course, I hear and recognize all of these points of view. But I grew up in what turned out to be a brief moment of social democracy in this country. It didn't go far enough, but it is an incomparable land to the land that we live in today, of brand new council houses, with your father working in a factory at the end of the road that the government had forced the company to redirect to, with a health centre at the other end of the road where you got free milk, orange juice, malt, a free NHS if you were clever enough, free university, completely free, and an era of free speech. Of course, the television was owned by just a few oligarchs, and if you didn't cut the mustard with them, you would never be seen on television. But nobody would ever dream of telling you that you were under arrest because of a placard that you held up. Nobody would ever dream that 90-year-old ladies, that blind men in wheelchairs, that 80-year-olds in their scores, maybe hundreds, would end up on terrorism charges in Britain for expressing support on a piece of cardboard for an organization of peaceful, non-violent, civil disobedience people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Now, our poll tonight is about a controversy that feels so very last year now, and it was only 2 days ago. Has Trump destroyed the BBC? This after the revelation, which I dealt with the other night on the show, that the BBC had deliberately falsified a speech by Donald Trump on the so-called insurrection on January 6th. By the way, when you call it a so-called insurrection, you still get completely repressed on social media. I had 7 million views on my Facebook page in the last 7 days. But the one video that got hardly any views at all was the one that described January 6th in the terms I just have. But anyway, Trump is now suing the BBC for $1 billion. I mean, you need a heart of stone not to laugh. You know, Kissinger once said about the Iran-Iraq war, it's a pity both sides can't lose. That's what most of us feel about a battle between Donald Trump and the BBC, each as venal as the other. In this case, because I hate the BBC so much, and because I have so much bitter experience of them, I kind of hope he gets his billion and that the BBC goes bankrupt. Defund the BBC is definitely my viewpoint. Anyway, has Trump destroyed the BBC? Answer yes or no. On my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. And if you're watching on the YouTube stream, please subscribe to my channel. Still more than half of you who watch on the YouTube stream haven't yet subscribed. And give a thumbs up to the show, will you? And if you're in the creme de la creme, the vanguard of my supporters, and you follow me on Patreon, t.me/George Galloway, you can vote there also. And there's a very interesting turnout on all of those portals. And for the first time, the House might well lose this particular poll. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada. +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number is 0044203 966 2625. Our first guest this evening needs little introduction. He's only the doyen of American journalists. He is the royal family of American journalists. He is the best investigative reporter at the head of the best journalistic house in the United States, the Grayzone. It's Max Blumenthal, and I'm glad to say he joins me now. Where do we start, Max? In an ordinary day, we'd start with the armada that the United States has sent to the coast of Venezuela. We'd start with the Trump Tower that he's going to build in the Gaza Strip. We'd start on all number of things. But we've got to start on the Epstein affair. He's in big trouble now, don't you think?
He is. And hope I can live up to that introduction. Jeffrey Epstein has resurfaced again in a very dramatic way, and Donald Trump is trying to bury him by making frantic phone calls to Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert. I'm just learning about this. I've just learned about this in the last few minutes. Lauren Boebert, the Republican from Colorado, who is trying to channel the anger of the MAGA base about the failure or refusal of Trump to release the Epstein files, has signed a petition which has a majority, it appears, of members of Congress calling for a release of these files. And the Trump administration is trying to prevent the seating of a Democratic representative who won an election in Arizona, Alida Grijalva, preventing her, and by preventing her from being seated will prevent this vote from reaching a critical mass to release the full Epstein files and Epstein client list. And so it's pretty clear what Trump is afraid of here, and more emails continue to come out from the collection of Michael Wolff, the New York City socialite and journalist who was a close associate of Jeffrey Epstein. In some of the emails, he appears to be providing counsel to Jeffrey Epstein. He has previously alleged that he had Polaroids or was shown Polaroids by Jeffrey Epstein of Donald Trump with underage girls seated on his lap by Epstein's pool. But now these emails are coming out showing that there's one email from Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell acknowledging that Trump knew about abuse that had taken place on his island, I believe, that Trump knew there were quote unquote victims. There's another email which shows that Tom Barak, who is Trump's envoy to Lebanon and is handling Turkey affairs, was a close Epstein associate, closer than we knew. In 2021, I think Tom Barak was rung up by the Justice Department for failing to register as a lobbyist for the United Arab Emirates, and he seemed to be kind of a connection for Epstein in the Gulf. Epstein had, according to some of these emails, gifted him a $11,000 watch and asked him for baby pictures. I don't know what that was referring to. But, this is all coming out in a trickle, and it could soon become a flood that will continue to consume the Trump administration and totally demoralize Trump's base.
Well, if Fuentes, the far-right fellow who's become quite famous recently, people being blacklisted for mentioning his name or talking to him. If Fuentes is correct, and I think he is, objectively, the second term of Donald Trump is a complete dumpster fire. It is a complete disaster. Everything he's touching is turning to SH1T. And no wonder the MAGA ranks are revolting.
Yeah, I mean, the real collapse of not just the second term of Donald Trump, but Trump's whole mystique began in July when the FBI under Kash Patel signed a memo with the DOJ under Pam Bondi not to release the Epstein files. And ever since then, it's just been all downhill because the base, and particularly America Firsters who are under 40, could no longer see them as credible. They were promised these files not only by Trump, but by Kash Patel, the FBI director, who promised in podcast interview after podcast interview an unprecedented disclosure that would destroy the deep state. Patel even started his own foundation promising legal actions against the deep state. And now look at what Kash Patel's doing. He's hiding behind his girlfriend, this wannabe country singer, Alexis Wilkins, using her as a proxy through the chair of his legal foundation, who is his personal lawyer, to file $5 million lawsuits against America First podcasters, not, liberal deep state villains, but podcasters on the right, because they mocked his girlfriend as a Mossad honeypot. And the issue of Israel is at the center of everything here. It's completely compromised, if not upended, the so-called America First agenda, because everyone under 35 who's on the right sees that Trump is serving a foreign country. And Epstein, what was he? It looks like he was Mossad adjacent. Stories emerging about Israeli spies staying at his house, about Jeffrey Epstein serving as a back channel to Russia on behalf of Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister. These emails, by the way, they're all out there in an email leak of hacked emails from former Israeli prime ministers. And the mainstream media hadn't really touched this. Now it's all coming out, and it's pretty clear that Israel's at the center of this, and this is partly what is propelling figures like Nick Fuentes to the forefront. It's sort of like there's this rebellion taking place on the right. It's not just, Nick Fuentes. It's like the son of Nikki Haley is openly revolting against Trump and the pro-Israel right. The son of Nikki Haley who called to finish them, referring to the people of Gaza. One of the most fanatically pro-Israel politicians, the former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador in Trump's first term. Her son just gave an interview, he's like 17 years old, saying Israel's not actually a US ally. Israel is just another country, and it doesn't serve our interests. This is just happening across the board among young people. There's this rebellion on the left with the election of Zohran Mamdani in New York, and there's a rebellion on the right that is just fracturing the right from within.
It's a wildfire, really, isn't it? And it's not going to be extinguished by phone calls to Nancy Mace. Anybody who now, after this, votes not to release the Epstein files is signing their political death warrant. It's an act of political suicide, isn't it?
It is. They will lose credibility. This is one of the few things that unites Americans across the political divide, is the desire to get to the bottom of the case of Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, to Americans on the left and the right, he represents an unaccountable, perverse, socially decadent and deviant elite that exists above the law. He represents something so much bigger than whatever he was, and they want accountability. And to the extent that their representatives won't deliver it and are afraid of it, well, they're in on the game. And in Trump's case, he directly was in on it. It's very clear that Donald Trump is hiding something. And he has even gone out and attacked members of his base as morons for seeking disclosure on the Epstein files. It's also not just the Epstein files. They feel frustrated about the JFK files, frustrated about so many other supposed deep state plots. And Trump is now consumed in creating new plots of his own. After indicting John Bolton, the self-proclaimed coup-monger, proud coup-monger, Trump went out and fulfilled John Bolton's greatest wet dream in dispatching a carrier fleet attack group to the shores of Venezuela. What is going on there? Well, President Gustavo Petro, the leftist president of Colombia, who has been personally sanctioned by Trump for insulting him and for complaining about Trump murdering Colombian citizens on the high seas, falsely accusing them of being drug dealers, has said that this entire show of force against Venezuela is a distraction by a pedophile elite which is seeking to conceal the Epstein files. So this is now an international scandal that goes well beyond U.S. Congress.
Indeed so. I wish we could talk about that issue all night, but I want to talk about one or two other things with you, if I may. You very acutely observed that Israel is at the center of all of this. And of course, Israel is at the center of the man who just appeared in the hallowed halls, if they are hallowed, of the White House. I refer, of course, to the erstwhile deputy leader of both al-Qaeda and ISIS, not a bad double that one, who, to my amazement, the U.S. embassy in Damascus still has his wanted poster on their website. $10 million you would have got for catching him just a few months ago. And now Donald Trump is squirting Trump perfume on him and joshing about how many wives Jolani has got. This Jolani revolution, which we were told was some kind of blessed revolution, was an American-Israeli job, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was a NATO job for sure, because of Turkish involvement in Sirlik Air Base. That's where the arms flowed to Jabhat al-Nusra, which was Jolani's gang in Syria. So yeah, absolutely. And just a quick correction on something I said.
And nobody... Yeah, go on. Sorry, go ahead.
Nobody bats an eye. I mean, there's no controversy about this in Washington at all. You're right. Quick correction on something I said before. Nikki Haley's son's 24, not 17. But, I wrote a book that came out in 2019 called The Management of Savagery. And the headline, the subheadline is How America's National Security State Fueled the Rise of Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Donald Trump. And now the former founder of Al-Qaeda's Syrian branch, which carried out heinous atrocities inside Syria, who is also the co-founder of ISIS, has met personally with Donald Trump in the Oval Office and been granted a friendly interview by Fox News, which just 1 week ago was cranking the Islamophobia up to 11 over the election of a much more secular LGBT-friendly figure named Zohran Mamdani as mayor of New York. So this has really bookended the story of the CIA backing jihadists starting at least in 1979, if not sooner, in Afghanistan, in order to weaken geopolitical foes, destroy independent countries, crush secular governments across the Muslim world, and shatter, destabilize previously strong states that were not aligned with the U.S. and were not handing over their oil to U.S. businessmen. And Jabhat al-Nusra founder Ahmed al-Sharaa, formerly known as Mohammed Jolani, has passed all of the tests of the predatory U.S. elite, which also includes the tests of the Zionist regime. And that means that he can now be welcomed into the White House. These tests include a willingness to take out loans with the IMF, and so he met the IMF's director 2 days ago, a willingness to cut contracts with American companies and privatize what's left of Syria's assets, which were devastated through U.S. sanctions, to allow Israel to occupy the Golan Heights and take Mount Hermon, which deprives Syria of deterrence against Israel, to not fire one single shot against Israeli soldiers as they advance close to the suburbs of Damascus, to also function under NATO stewardship through Turkish intelligence, and to ultimately join the Abraham Accords, which could be more appropriately described as the Epstein Accords. That's what Ahmed Sharaa has signed on to. Syria as a state, which was once the last strong independent Arab nation, is gone, and it will be balkanized. And I wonder how long Ahmed Sharaa himself will last, given the amount of pressure on him from within and without, because I'm not sure the Syrians, how long the Syrian people can take this level of indignity.
Well, he's in a vice because his ISIS and Al-Qaeda base, all these Uyghurs that he's brought there and given citizenship, and these foreign fighters from every stan, and indeed from farther afield in Europe and maybe North America, definitely one from Australia, whom I saw holding up 2 severed heads in a picture just the other day. So he's got them as one kind of pressure, and there's the pressure that must inevitably come from the fact that a sophisticated, Levantine, moderate Muslim society like Syria cannot be governed by people with the take religiously of the Taliban and of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Syrians are just not that kind of people.
And that's his project. I think that's the compromise he's willing to make, is to sell off Syria's sovereignty economically and politically, and in exchange, he will get to transform the more heavily populated areas of Syria under his realm into miniature Kandahars. And we've seen these scenes at the, University of Homs and elsewhere of Takfiri forces essentially imposing a new dress code and gender segregation in these previously secular spaces. That's the project, but it will also be rejected by Syrians who, whatever their view of the Assad family might have been, enjoyed life in the pluralistic mosaic that had previously existed, particularly Christians. And with Donald Trump in power promising military strikes against Nigeria for supposed Islamist attacks on Christians, which actually appear to be land disputes, there's a lot of pressure on al-Sharaa to maintain the safety of the Christian, what's left of the Christian community. I mean, he can do whatever he wants to the Alawites, who were slaughtered in the thousands just several months ago. But the Christians, he can't touch them because that risks everything with the U.S. Al-Sharaa is also making a big show of his support for the barely existent Syrian Jewish community. This is obviously a play for American Jewish support and Trump's support. And then, as you mentioned, he has these muhajirin, the foreign fighters. There are thousands of them. Most of them are Uyghur, very radical fake forces from Xinjiang in China, from the East Turkestan Islamic Party, which was carrying out mass casualty terrorist attacks in China before they were crushed there, and they ultimately moved to Idlib. I actually interviewed one of their self-styled helpers, whose name is Bilal Abdul Karim. He was an American from New York who converted to Islam and ultimately wound up in Syria and was one of the key journalists embedded with the armed opposition al-Qaeda-aligned forces in Aleppo and Idlib. And he was actually jailed under al-Sharaa in Idlib, treated horribly. He has sort of testified to torture in al-Sharaa's prisons, a lack of freedom. He told me that he sees al-Sharaa replicating the cronyism and repression of the Assad era. And he calls himself a representative of these foreign helpers and fighters, and they are all applying for Syrian citizenship. They want to become citizens of Syria and to impose their agenda. He maintains that they'll be able to live with the Christians, but I have not seen that before, and given their track record in Idlib, it's pretty grim, where Christians were forced to convert or be killed. You saw Druze in Idlib be forced to dig up their ancestors' graves because they were not buried according to this strict interpretation of Islamic custom. So if that's applied to the rest of Syria, I think this thing unravels pretty quickly.
Well, you certainly did live up to my introduction. Max Blumenthal of the Grayzone. It's been a pleasure, an honor actually, to chew the fat with you on all of these issues. all of which, any one of which, we could have spent the next 2 hours talking about. Max Blumenthal, I salute you. Thanks for joining us. The phone numbers, again, if you want to respond in the US and Canada, it's +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland. It's 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. I will be right back with your calls. Stay tuned. Donald, what would you like to say?
Well, hi, George. I hope I can keep myself relevant because of my blood pressure, which goes up when considering that they're insulting my intelligence, in particular in regards to the Gaza situation, to say it lightly. It is ridiculous how these things are characterized, particularly in the people's minds of who's right and who's wrong and who's on the best side of history, as terrorists. What is this? Is absolutely insult to the intelligence of anybody in the right-thinking human being.
It is. Yeah. But we have to face something, Donald. You are an exception in Copenhagen. I never watch or listen to mainstream news or read it. But today, for some reason, I heard the global newsroom hourly news bulletin. And it was as different a perspective as you and I could possibly imagine. And the parallel universe that we are living in. Admittedly, more and more of our society is finding its news and its analysis in places like this, the mother of all talk shows, and other similar events. But the great majority still of our fellow citizens are getting their news and analysis from their national equivalent of the global newsroom. For them, black is white. War is peace. They are the masters of doublespeak and distortion, because I realized that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who listened to that news bulletin but did not know what you, Donald, in Copenhagen, and I, and the other people watching this know. And that's a measure of how far we've yet to travel.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Has Trump destroyed the BBC? Yes or no? You might argue that it was already destroying itself. You might argue that not yet, but do cast a vote. There's only yes or no on our polls. Let's take the first call. It's my good friend Terence from Reading in England, but he wants to talk about Uganda. I'm all ears, Terence.
Well, good evening, Mr. Galloway. I trust you knew as well. Many years ago, I was lucky enough to be a tutor in international development, among other subjects at university, and I've kept in touch with a lot of people from all over the world. And I was talking to a person who shall remain nameless. She's still in Uganda. She's a wonderful person. And she's telling me that the amount of aeroplanes leaving, because it's a landlocked country with gold, copper, nickel, iron ore, the phosphates, and everything else you can think of, is phenomenal. The Zionists, and as the very words to me were, the Zionists are stealing everything. But the good thing, she says, is that the people of Uganda who have relied on apparent what's known as United States aid, and that's been stopped, they are happy, because the elite that stole all that United States aid are slowly beginning to get the message and come across being threatened, and a few have left it already. So there is room for slight echoes of joy coming from the landlocked country that is Uganda. And she asked me if I could get it out there, and I said I certainly will. So whilst the distraction
you did. I have some knowledge of Uganda myself, and I remember opining here that when they found the world's largest single cache of gold in them there hills in Uganda, that the time would come, and it has not yet, that they would be visited and be found to be in want of more democracy and human rights in Uganda. I await that happening. But I'm smiling, Terence, because I misunderestimated you, as George W. Bush would put it. Or rather, I judged you by my own standards. When I saw that you wanted to talk about Uganda, I thought you were going to recall, as a former private eye writer myself, in relation to what Donald Trump was discussing with Virginia Giuffre for hours in the mansion of Jeffrey Epstein. I thought you were going to say, as Private Eye used to, that they were discussing Ugandan affairs. Now, you can leave comments. Scan the QR code now on the corner of the screen, and you can leave comments, as AKY Woman 1 has. Thank you for having Max Blumenthal on, the best of the best journalists alive today. I truly believe that. I truly, truly believe that. I wasn't exaggerating in recommending him. And Di says, game over for Trump. And T Shreds says, the files are so atrocious. Trump got destroyed by a BBC. Jeffrey R86 says, no kings, no thugs, no charlatans, no liars, no paedophiles. That's got a ring to it. You could put that on a placard and might not get arrested in England. K-Man Mana says, you wait, George, 2026 is going to be insane. I fear it will. I fear it will. Let's hear from Will in California on U.S. corruption. Welcome back, Will. What have you got for us?
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to be on the air with you. You know, a great interview with Max Blumenthal. He's a treasure for us. And Trump has definitely had a bad week indeed. But we're not going to get past any of this as Republicans just don't get it by allowing yet another recent November election to slip through their hands. And only a very few reporters have pointed out the grift that's running rampant in this latest election. You know, we had understaffed precincts, we had voting machine malfunctions, power outages, and yes, even bomb threats were employed by the Democrats this time. While it's nothing new, it's getting pretty old now, and you may call it a conspiracy theory, but there's just too many coincidences. It all started right here in California back in 2004 when we modernized voting protocols with the machinery. It couldn't have been more obvious in 2020, but nothing was done, and 22 and 24 followed just as bad. We can talk policy all we want, George, but until we implement transparency and election integrity, nothing matters. One-day voting, paper ballots, hand-counted with voter ID.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. And, of course, Trump has done nothing about any of these things. Nobody's been arrested for the rigging of the presidential election of 2020. Nobody has been arrested for the Russiagate hoax in Congress. Schiff is still strutting his stuff in California and in D.C. The list of things that Kash Patel has not done would stretch down Pennsylvania Avenue. These people talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, and they have done nothing. And now, by next November, will have the power to do nothing, to make some salutary arrests and trials and convictions that will make the Democratic Tammany Hall machine a bit less bold. Nothing has been done, and therefore now nothing will be done. Donald Trump is now, from this moment, a lame duck president. He might not even see out the whole term. Now, look, tonight's extremely impressive Wall of Fame. I have to draw attention to it. This evening's top donors are James Preston, Motaz Salah, George J. Ashkar Jr. George, your donations are incredibly generous. I'm so indebted to you. Christine Williams and Alberto Perez. They're the Wall of Fame, but you, even if you cannot match their donations, you can be a part of the forces of good by just going to moats.tv and leaving even $1, €1, £1. We need it. We really do. Let me go to London, where Dean wants to talk about the BBC. Go ahead, Dean.
Hello, George. As I would like to say,
Hi.
Uncle George, just want to take the opportunity to thank you for attending your University of the Airways.
Welcome.
Time is always against us, George. So quickly, I just want to make my point. BBC, my opinion on it is slightly different to that of my peers and friends. This guy was resigned, did not do this on his own. If you are moving against the US president, that is not for entertainment purposes, it would be political. That man would have been directed by the government to do that, which means the British government moved against the American president. Now, this man is a hero. He took one for the team, he took one for the country. He is not the villain as we are. BBC is the villain. This gentleman, I believe, was acting under instructions from the British government to act against the US president, against the Democrats. I'm sorry, in support of the Democrats against the US president. So that, I just believe that he's not as much of a villain as we're making it out. He's under instruction.
Well, look, I have always, Dean, as you know, I have always believed that the BBC is a deep state conspiracy against the best interests of the British public. It has been since the day and hour that it was founded. When the general strike broke out in 1926, the BBC was mobilized like an armed force against the trade unions who were striking against cuts to their pay and increases to their hours. And it has not changed in the last 100 years, almost exactly 100 years. It is the purpose of the BBC to convey, in a more sophisticated way than state broadcasters used to do. They've lost the touch, they've lost the finesse of late, but the purpose of the BBC is to convey the narrative that the British state wants. Now, I stress state, not government, because, for example, in the Brexit, the government wanted, or at least a large part of the government, wanted the people to vote to Brexit. Prime Minister didn't, but Boris Johnson and Michael Gove and others, they were on the Brexit side. But the deep state was with David Cameron and Tony Blair and John Major, seeking to persuade the British to vote Remain. And so you had a cleaving for the first time in my lifetime, where the government wanted one thing and the state wanted something different. And the state lost. We did Brexit. Fat lot of good it's done us. We haven't used it. It's like struggling for independence and then immediately volunteering total dependence on the people you've just declared independence from. But that's for another day. The BBC acts on behalf of the state. And when it comes to international affairs, even more brazenly so. The BBC World Service. What do you think the BBC World Service is? It's MI6 with a microphone. It has the same enemies as MI6 and the same friends, and whatever MI6 wants, it gets. And indeed, much of its funding even comes from the British Foreign Office, which is the parent of MI6. So the BBC, I want nothing to do with it. They want nothing to do with me, I should admit. But I want nothing to do with it. I hope it goes under. I hope Trump sues them. I hope he costs them $1 billion. And I hope it gets broken up. Because any state broadcaster in 2025 is an anomaly. And this state broadcaster is the most pernicious imaginable, because it sneers at other state broadcasters as if it itself was not a state mouthpiece. Thanks, Dean, for giving me a chance to talk about that. Now, look, we're flying this week. The MOATS podcast is in the top 10 in Serbia, the Philippines, and Zimbabwe this week for politics. It's in the top 20 in Croatia, in Kuwait, in Turkey, and in Pakistan, with a top 40 spot in India and Ireland. You can download the MOATS podcast right now by scanning that QR code in the corner. Let's talk to our old friend who's in Sydney, Australia, which means she has gotten up in the middle of the night to make this phone call. It's Hanan in Sydney on Al Jolani. Welcome back, Hanan.
George, glad to talk to you again. I just want to say now what America would say to Iraqi people when their excuse to invade Iraq is to liberal Iraqi women, and what they will say to Iraqi women that al-Julani raped them, he and his followers. Thousands of Yazidiyas women in the north of Iraq has been raped by this man and his group. What they will, I don't understand what words they can say to particularly to Yazidiyas women. Also, I wonder where is the Syrian people about what's happening now in Syria. Their countries has been, I don't know, 1/3 of Syria has been taken by Israel. The president of Syria, he used to eat the heart of his victims. I don't understand. I really don't understand what's happening to Syrian people. We didn't hear from them something, like serious action against this man.
Well, look, that's a very powerfully affecting telephone call made in the middle of the night from Sydney, Australia by Hanan. I'm almost speechless in terms of formulating a reply to it. I've got to be brutal, though. You ask what they will say to the Iraqi women, they will say nothing. They don't regard Iraqi women, victims of al-Jolani, as of any importance at all. In fact, we now know from the Epstein files, they don't regard young American girls as of any importance at all. They certainly will not be holding what ISIS and al-Qaeda did in Iraq against Jolani in Syria, because they got what they wanted in Syria. The British got what they wanted. The French, all of them. It was a NATO operation, as Max Blumenthal corrected me, and quite correctly corrected me. It was an American-Israeli NATO operation to destroy the Syrian Arab Republic, which, whatever other faults it might have had, was a country where Christians, Muslims, Alawites, Druze, and a multitude of ethnicities, Kurds, where people could live in one state. And that state is now destroyed forever. It will never come back. So you ask, where are the Syrian people? Well, which Syrian people? You are right that Israel controls 1/3 of Syria, and Turkey controls another third. That leaves 1/3 for ISIS and al-Qaeda, Damascus, Aleppo, half-half, shared with Turkey, Homs, and so on. These are now the only territories that the so-called government in Damascus actually controls. And what is it they want to control? They want to control how women dress, where women can go, what jobs women can do. They want to control the length of the mustache of the Druze. They want to control whether prayers start like this or like that. They want to impose their own takfiri mentality on every religious minority, or their own sect of Sunni Islam, but not Sunni enough for them, not extreme enough for them. That's all they want to do. This Jolani, what else can he do? What resources has he got? What ideas has he got? What vision has he got? He's a heart-eating, throat-cutting, beheading savage. What else do you expect from him? I don't blame him. I blame the barbarians in suits in London, in Washington, in Paris, and around the world, who knew exactly what this Yeti was, but armed him, funded him, and shielded him nonetheless. Thank you, Hanan. Let me take a quick break, and then more of your calls, which first of which will be Jeff in Michigan. But a quick break first. On the line is a Rose in Texas. I was at the beginning of a song on Californication, which is a song. Rose, welcome to the show.
Fan of the show, transgender fan of the show, and I wanted to briefly address your monologue from last week on Californication, because I almost entirely agree with what you said. Trans women athletes taking medals and records, directing children at nightclubs, and even going to elementary schools themselves, not to mention hormone blockers for children as well. The attack on freedom of speech, not only against conservatives, but anyone who doesn't fall in line with the agenda, rainbow flags on NATO military aircraft, which is certainly doing more to cultivate anti-queer sentiment around the world than there already is. All of that makes me sick. So because I don't believe in incest, bestiality, necrophilia, and pedophilia, I'm basically culturally right-wing by today's standards, even though less than 5 years ago, I'd still be left-wing. So in regards to you and everyone else watching who thinks of me and people like me as the villains right now, you should know that I support the most traditional Muslim, Jewish, Abrahamic believers to be as homophobic and transphobic as they want, because guess what? That's freedom of religion, which is a value we claim to have in the West. Now, my religion, I suppose, is I believe I'm a woman, but guess what? Not everyone has to convert to my religion. Otherwise, we basically have a theocracy, only this theocracy is for the ever-evolving LGBTQIA supercalifragilisticexpialidocious club. So that's all I wanted to get out of my system. Thank you.
Well, Rose, if I could put your call in a glass bottle and ship it around the world, I promise you that I would do so. Crystal clear, beautifully expressed, and I wish you every happiness in life. It is exactly what people who are transgender should be saying. And if they were, they would disappoint the liberal zealots who want to use them as a battering ram against the traditional family values of the rest of us. Beautifully expressed, Rose. I'll never forget it.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Let's go to the aforementioned Michigan, where Jeff wants to talk about Donald Trump. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you, George. By the way, please take care of yourself, will you? Because
Will do, sir.
We need you. Trump, as of a few days ago, was on the bad side of what has been happening with the shutdown here in this country, and he was roundly booed at some football game that I saw a bit of.
He was.
Yeah, and we had just triumphed in the governor's races and in the Mondami race in New York. So we finally had him in the crosshairs. So when these 8 senators voted to end the shutdown, that was like a punch to the gut for us who want to see the end of Trump and his type from our government. The reason I bring it up is because I don't want myself or any of us to take our eyes off of AIPAC and the cancer that has grown in this country, which are these Zionists that now populate our Christian religion as well, and Charlie Kirk, up until his people are now talking about he had a change of heart. But I looked up the 8 senators who voted to see what the contributions were from AIPAC. Only one received less than $500,000. Rosen received $2.1 million. Durbin, $1.1 million. Shaheen, $545,000. The rest were $500,000 or better, except for King, who only received $40,000. But these are the people that voted to end the shutdown when we, in fact, were looking at the end of Donald Trump, in my opinion, because I think people had seen him for what he is. He had stopped the food benefit under SNAP, huge increases in Medicaid, and Medicaid is a very big benefit to low-income people and their health care. It's a huge subsidy, and it goes to the insurance companies, and it was a benefit to the insurance companies. So it was not the insurance lobby that wanted the end of the shutdown. It was AIPAC, because Trump is the best thing they've ever seen in the Oval Office. That's my view.
Well, it's my view as well. In fact, it's his view. He tells us that. What I suspect, I can't prove it yet, although the rate these emails are coming out of Washington, it might be proved by the end of the night. I suspect that his support, which is unprecedented, not just for Israel, but for Netanyahu as a man, is connected to the compromise that Epstein had on him and had deliberately garnered on him and used to ensure, or Netanyahu used what he had to ensure that Trump stayed exactly where they wanted him to on this whole Gaza genocide. Does that strike you as likely, Jeff?
Absolutely. And matter of fact, I don't know whether you remember this, but just maybe a month ago, a retired Mossad agent told us on RT, he told us that the reason that Clinton wasn't able to get or didn't get the agreement between Arafat and the Israelis was because of Epstein's compromat. Because
fascinating. Jeff in Michigan, thanks, big thanks for that call, and my regards to the good people of Dearborn if you see them. Now, a big shout out to tonight's top donors who've already been onto the MOATS.tv website and have made the Wall of Fame. Andrew McIntosh, Victor Oritz, Paul Rutan, Reg Mayer, and Robert Brown. A big thanks to each and every one of you, and a big thanks in advance to each and every one of you who is going to donate after the show on MOATS.tv. I know you will. We've got a legend on the line. It's May in Oklahoma. May, welcome back.
Hey, George. Much love, respect, and just congratulations to you and your family and your team. And I really just wanted to call this evening and say we were right. The emperor had no clothes on. And it's getting worse. And I'm very glad that he is being exposed. We all know he's a huge liar. I don't even know if he ever tells the truth. But this is just proof, evidence that he's been lying all along, and lots of other people have been lying. And you mentioned the barbarians in suits in Washington, London, etc. And every one of the people in our Congress, they are all barbarians. There are maybe 5 that are not supportive of Israel right now and AIPAC, but the rest are gleefully accepting legal bribes and gleefully killing people all over the place, not just Gaza. Gaza's on the top of my mind, but everywhere. I'm in Yemen, Sudan. We've killed people in Iran. We're going to kill some more, I'm positive. Everywhere Israel points its finger, we murder people. And not me, I'm not a part of it. I don't agree with it, but our government certainly does. And with the government shutdown, they were trying to murder Americans. And that's not going to really get any better now that the Democrats caved, which we expected. I expected. I guess some people had some faith in them, but I didn't. And I knew eventually they were going to buy into all this. And, all we really want from our politicians is for them to protect the American people and to spend American dollars to help American people. Just $1 billion or $2 billion of the money we're spending all over the world would solve homelessness in this country. And, we need universal health care, and they're just too much bought into it, and too many of them are compromised. And so I'm very sad that you and I were right about Trump and Epstein, but in a way, I'm glad that we were right. We read him like a book, and you read the whole world like a book, and that's one reason I appreciate you.
Well, that call just proved why you are one of the show's legends, May, in Oklahoma. Thank you for making it. Very poignant, what you said. It's not asking too much, is it, for your politicians to look after your people first? Wasn't that what MAGA was supposed to be about? Wasn't that what America First was supposed to be about? They hate Putin because he puts Russia first. I wish I had a leader who put Britain first. I wish you had a leader who put America first. These people roam around the globe dealing out death and destruction while their own countries are going down the drain. That's what makes me so very angry. From one legend to another. It's the legend that is Uncle Hoz in London on Trump and Epstein. Hoz, welcome back.
Thank you, George. I know that you know that I'm basically on my back a lot of the time, so I'm watching a lot of the podcasts and everything else. And I have to say to you that I think that not only is MAGA dead, but the whole of the Trump presidency is now just gone, and he's gonna lose massively in the 26 elections that are coming up, and that means he's going to become a lame duck president, which means he's going to be unable to do any of the things that he wanted to do. He's done all of this on behalf of the state of Israel, and the whole of the Epstein side of things is to protect the state of Israel. And by doing this, he's literally turned himself into a lame duck. He cannot escape the Epstein thing. He cannot escape what he's done. And the point I'm trying to make to you is he could have been a transformative president that could have done really amazing things for America. And because of his unwillingness to break the chains of the state of Israel that have got around him, he's literally, the rest of this presidency, because I promise you in 26, he's going to lose massively, which means he's going to lose the House, he's going to lose the Senate, and that's it. That's what happened to Barack Obama. You lose the Senate, you're done. And the thing is, how much hope did we all have when he said that it's going to stop on Gaza on the 19th? There will be no more wars. We thought this was something that's going to happen. Benjamin Netanyahu came over, told him what's going to happen. I don't know how you feel about it. Do you really think that he has a chance of actually saving his presidency? Do you see any way of it? Do you think that he's not going to lose massively? I'd like to know what you think of my assessment of, and I tell
no,
you right now.
I agree with your assessment, and we'll have to see what this all does psychologically to Trump. A great word that Max Blumenthal used was his mystique died in July when he turned on the Epstein affair. It was an affair he was going to clean up, and it became an affair that doesn't actually exist. It's a hoax. There is no Epstein file. There is no Epstein list. Now, that's the day his presidency died. And the problem is, even a lame duck can still deal out death and destruction everywhere. The tragedy is a lame duck cannot resolve the NATO-Russia war in Ukraine. So I'm not rejoicing at all of this. On the contrary, I am sad about all of this. Because if I believe one good thing about Donald Trump, it is that he did sincerely want to bring the NATO-Russia war to an end. But he has not done so. And I believe that he has not done so because he is totally compromised and therefore can do nothing good, even if it was his intention to do good. So all of us are going to suffer from the fact that Donald Trump has killed his own presidency. He may or may not have been shot in the ear. I'm beginning to think not, the more I look at his ear. But he may or may not have been shot in the ear, but he certainly has shot his own presidency right in the middle of the head. Let me take a quick break because we've got one of the brightest young American journalists to be found anywhere. I'm remiss in not having him had on the mother of all talk shows for too long. He is the one and only Danny Haiphong, geopolitical analyst, journalist, and broadcaster. He's coming up. Just a couple of minutes. Stay with me. His approval ratings are in the toilet. He won a huge mandate well less than a year ago, and he's thrown it all away. He has an approval rating of just under 40% now, and a disapproval rating of all the others. There are no don't knows in the issue of Donald Trump. And so he has maximized the number of people who hate him or dislike him, and he has systematically undermined the voting base that formerly liked him. And I don't know whether that is because of his donors, because he's intellectually challenged, because it's of his age. I really don't know.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
He's young, he's eloquent, he's brilliant. Danny Haiphong, here he is, joining us now on the mother of all talk shows. It's quite a night, Danny. There's so much to talk to you about and so little time to do it. But I'd like to begin, as I did with Max Blumenthal earlier, to hear your take on where Donald Trump's presidency stands this evening.
Well, that's a great question, and thanks so much for having me back on, George. It's always a pleasure. In terms of Donald Trump's presidency, it is in crisis. It's in ruins in many respects. I was listening earlier, and the Jeffrey Epstein case never goes away. We have the New York Times putting out their information of his direct contacts with Jeffrey Epstein, which he has denied over and over and over again. And there's also the fact that Donald Trump has essentially, for like it or not, I mean, I never ascribed to much of Donald Trump's program, but he had a mandate to do many things, including end the conflict in Ukraine. And he's essentially done none of these things. And what he has done has only brought more crisis and misery for the general U.S. population, especially those who make up the working class population. This is the big problem Donald Trump faces. It's that on the one hand, he cannot seem to at all direct U.S. foreign policy in a way that reflects what he said was his vision, which was to be the peace presidency. In fact, the U.S. is mired still in West Asia. They're talking about opening a military base close to Gaza that can hold up to 10,000 U.S. personnel. There's talks of war with Venezuela. There's, of course, the conflict in Ukraine raging. And it just goes on and on and on. Threats toward Nigeria. But the big problem for Donald Trump is that all of this comes under the condition and context of a general economic crisis in the United States, high inflation, the tariffs have been a complete disaster, and Donald Trump looks weak on many fronts, including when it comes to the trade war, which he so humiliatingly lost on many different occasions since his so-called April Liberation Day. So Donald Trump's presidency is in big trouble. I happen to think that that might be by design, because oftentimes U.S. presidents, as well as the majority party, like to cede some territory and ground so that their criminality, so that their policies that are hurting both the people and the planet can be blamed more so on the other party. Right now, it's very difficult to do. He still does it. He says it's Biden's war in Ukraine. He said it's Biden's fault. The economy is where it is. But the fact of the matter is that he had a mandate. He has both chambers of Congress, and he has a presidency he's not afraid of wielding its utmost, if not more power than what is granted to it. And still, we are in the crisis that we are in. So it falls at his feet. And essentially, what we're looking at is a presidency in ruins.
Well, let's break down some of those issues. We'll start with the most obvious, clear and present danger, which is a Latin Vietnam, an invasion by American soldiers of a vast territory filled with millions of highly radicalized people, all of them with guns. What could possibly go wrong? Danny, your take. Is he really going to do this?
I wouldn't be surprised if he tried. It was back in his first administration that he tried to basically implant Juan Guaido. And there was an attempt on Nicolas Maduro's life that was backed by the United States. And so he has not been afraid. His administration has never been afraid, whether it's Trump 1 or now, to back the most extreme elements of Venezuela's opposition, which also happen to be the most unpopular. So there's a lot of room here for the United States to get embroiled and bogged down in an absolute quagmire, because despite the sanctions, despite the attempt to delegitimize Venezuela's leadership, its social system, the Bolivarian Revolution, as they call it, this has not actually led to any kind of success for Venezuela's right-wing opposition and U.S.-backed opposition. It's been the opposite, actually. And so, as you noted, Venezuela's population is being armed. The vast majority of people in Venezuela are poor, they are working class, and they do support the government, which means they are all ready to fight essentially to the death to defend their sovereignty. And it's always been the case since Hugo Chavez came into power in the late 1990s that the military has been on the side of the government. They have not been able to turn the military. Donald Trump still hasn't been able to do it. There's rumors, there's leaks coming out saying that Donald Trump's administration is trying, the CIA is trying to do this, and it's not working. So if the United States does this, and we have many different options, but let's say they take the most extreme form, which is land strikes on Venezuela, this could be the death knell of U.S. influence in Latin America. It may be the silver lining, because right now the situation in Latin America is very divided. You have figures like Javier Milei, who are extreme libertarian, who want to see complete subservience to the U.S. and Israel and Latin America. And then you have people like Nicolas Maduro, who wants to see a sovereign, multipolar Latin America. If the U.S. attacks Venezuela and tries to invade, we are going to see a massive shift away from the Malays of the world, away from the U.S. puppets, toward a more united Latin America. And that will be the legacy of Donald Trump. Essentially, he did it in Iran when he bombed Iran after at the end of the 12-day war that he backed Israel over. And it's likely going to happen in Latin America, but it will come at the expense of Venezuelan civilians, Venezuelan people, and it will come at the expense also of the U.S.'s overall legitimacy in the world. This has really been Donald Trump's legacy so far. It's his wrecking ball that he is swinging. And I wouldn't be surprised if he did try, because we all know, and I think, George, you've been following politics for a long time. When midterm elections come, when there is a U.S. election on the way, there tends to be an attempt by the presidency, by the Oval Office, to make a kind of statement. So we should all be alert and aware of that, because this has been, for people like Marco Rubio, this has been a project long in the waiting.
Yeah, a wag the dog war, but that's only of any use if the war goes well. I think both you and I know that the chances of an invasion of Venezuela going well for the United States are close to zero. I mean, they can bomb, of course, and they might well do so. They can even kill the president, as they certainly have tried to do so in the past. But the Chavez revolution has millions of adherents and has delivered for, as you say, the very poorest people in Venezuela. The poorest people, the blackest people, the most indigenous people have all benefited, despite all the sanctions from the Bolivarian Revolution. And now they've all got weapons. I mean, Maduro is such a dictator that he's given millions of people weapons, which, if they hated him, they could turn on him. But he's confident that they'd rather fire them at the Yankees. So a wag the dog war, well, Trump would be betting everything on that. It's quite a gamble, isn't it?
It is, and your audience probably remembers, George, in 2011 when the U.S. Utilized NATO to bomb and overthrow the government of Libya. Muammar Gaddafi did a very similar thing, because Libya didn't actually have its own standing army. It was actually such a democracy. It was so decentralized. It claimed itself to be a direct democracy that its only army was a people's army. And that is what was fighting the terrorists on the ground and was succeeding up until the bombing campaign. So all that is to say is that the United States is not looking at an easy war here. I believe that Nicolas Maduro could be assassinated. The United States, the CIA, Israel, they are good at terrorist attacks. They are good at igniting a kind of internal crisis. That could happen. But then what is the result? The result is likely to be a long, protracted, ultimately losing war that will likely unite the rest of the region, including Venezuelans, against the United States. And the consequences on the world stage, it'll be another example to the rest of the world of what happens when you defy, when you try to chart your own course in destiny of development, political, economic, and otherwise, when you assert your sovereignty. This is going to be a lesson to the rest of the world of what is likely to come, and it will move the rest of the world still more in the direction of multipolarity. This has been the legacy of all U.S. presidents, arguably since 2001 when the war on terror was declared, but it accelerated dramatically under Obama, under Trump, and then Biden really lit the flame that Donald Trump now can't seem to put out and is only blowing wind onto the fire. That is, or fanning the flames. And that is what a war in Venezuela will do. It'll be a disaster. The United States, it's not the same world anymore. The United States cannot dictate terms in the same way that it could. They have to even make up rumors about Nicolas Maduro saying that he was trying to give up everything to stop a war, when all of the words that come out of his mouth are the exact opposite as he holds up Ho Chi Minh and arms the population. It will be a disaster for the U.S. It's just a matter of what kind of disaster does the Trump administration want, what can it handle, and what will be the consequences. And they will be bad. They will be bad all the way around. Any short-term gains will be met with long-term problems and crises.
How did you feel about that jihadist, that Sharia law man, not Mamdani, Jolani, sitting in the White House, getting sprayed by perfume, Trump perfume, God knows what that's like, asked how many wives he's got, because I never know with you guys, joshing around in the Oval Office, a man that not 1 year ago you would have got $10 million for turning him in.
Yeah, it's just absolutely disgusting. On the one hand, there have been many that have been very critical of Vladimir Putin having a head of state meeting with Jolani. And the fact of the matter is that Russia was not the architect of regime change in Syria. The United States was. And so Russia has to play realpolitik, because that is what a government does that is trying to essentially stave away war, no matter what we might think of it and how the optics look. The United States is a completely different animal. The United States is the architect of regime change. The United States was the one, through both its vassal states in the region, Israel, and itself, backing people like Jolani. The United States had a bounty on Jolani's head. The embassy, the U.S. Embassy of Syria, all the way up until Jolani was anointed president, had that ex post saying that there was a massive bounty to capture Jolani, dead or alive. This is who Jolani was. He is a head chopper. He is somebody who has committed untold crimes, and it was all to the benefit of the empire. It was all to the benefit of the U.S. in Israel. And now he comes in as a literal head chopper, president, anointed president at the White House, treated with the utmost of just, some people called it awkward, but it was pathetic. It was, in my estimation, a spit in the face to all of those who opposed the war on Syria. Much of his base opposed the war on Syria, opposed what was happening there, opposed what is going on, the sectarian strife, the armed groups, the alqaeda affiliates like Jolani, these types. And now Donald Trump is embracing them and even calling for what many people might not have been paying attention to, perhaps even a more cemented military presence for the United States in Syria as it starts to roll in the privatization wagon to strip Syria of all of its assets. This is the Syria that the United States created, and this is the Syria that now Donald Trump is embracing in the most crass and really despicable form. That was the takeaway for me, was that all of those years of supporting regime change in Syria has led to one of the most really embarrassing and despicable optics that we've seen. And this is something that Donald Trump ultimately embraces, but it's these kind of optics that actually don't do him well, that really just harm his administration. And more people are seeing what it is really all about. It's about the U.S. Maintaining and expanding its hegemony at all costs. And Jolani is simply a tool to do that, whether he has a suit or whether he is out, on the battlefield as a paid proxy of the U.S., of Saudi, of whoever it is, chopping heads and committing massacres at the behest of empire.
Although the media can be counted on, there he was in the country that suffered the terrible crime of 9/11. We're told at the hands of al-Qaeda. Here's the deputy leader of al-Qaeda in your country, in the White House, in the Oval Office, and everyone's forgotten 9/11. I didn't see any commentary on any of the mainstream, certainly not on the television, that held his feet to the fire over 9/11. Maybe called for an apology or something. They got none of that and didn't ask for it.
No, and this is all part of the ruse. Really, what was a massive population kind of manipulation on the part of the U.S. foreign policy establishment from the very beginning of the United States, before 9/11 even happened, had been supporting, arming through the CIA these groups. Many might remember the Soviet Afghanistan war, which the CIA was heavily arming and funding the Mujahideen there, which eventually became forces like the Jolanis of the world. So this is a historic problem. And even the one interview I saw on Fox News where he was questioned about what he felt about 9/11, what did he think about it? Even that answer just showed the defensiveness. He was trying to say that he was not involved at all. He was only 19 years old. But the problem here is that when he said that, he essentially implicated himself in being involved in operations of a very similar kind, if not that one. And this is how absolutely embarrassing it is for the United States, whether it's the corporate media trying to whitewash him or whether it's Donald Trump spraying him with, I guess, a kind of a whitewash cologne. Whatever the optics are and whatever the approach is to Jolani, like this is how embarrassing and humiliating it is. It is showing the world exactly what the U.S. foreign policy establishment does, and that is to arm, fund, train, make these groups weapons of their own foreign policy objectives, only for them often to blow back. But when they don't, when it does work out like in Syria, then they are embraced as heroes, more heroic than even their own troops, which died in the thousands because of the wars that were justified by 9/11. It's absolutely criminal, and it is something that I think many people in the United States are looking at either in disgust or they are looking at it in a way where they understand that this is not about them. The government doesn't care about them. Donald Trump doesn't care about them either. It's all about power for the tiny few at the expense of the rest. And Donald Trump is forwarding that in the most obscene ways when it comes to Jolani and that visit.
Brazen. Danny, how can people follow you, as I know they will want to if they aren't already?
Yeah, sure. Appreciate it, George. They can follow me on YouTube. Just follow my name, Danny Haiphong. Just type that into the search, and you can find all of my work on my channel covering geopolitics from Ukraine to West Asia, China, and beyond. And that's the best place. Thanks so much for having me on, George. It's always a pleasure.
You've been brilliant. You've been brilliant, and your work is outstanding. And it's a privilege to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us. Danny Haiphong, geopolitical analyst and journalist. Let's go to Washington, D.C. Where else? Where the big Amish wants to talk about Trump. On you go, Amish.
Good evening, George. Thank you for your time on your amazing show.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I've been very charitable to President Trump in viewing his actions and decisions, but there are so many coincidences that lead to the obvious conclusion that they're not coincidences. Is President Trump and the Trump administration compromised and influenced, whether by foreign nations? So that leads us into the Epstein files that you brought up, Venezuela, the Charlie Kirk investigation. Even we are getting nowhere from Cash Patel. The transparency that is lacking for what Trump had called, and his administration, the most transparent administration in history. We're getting nothing. We're getting, they're telling us to milk the bull. They're giving us bull milk. That's what they're giving us. And I think I speak on behalf of, probably a good 10 to 20% of the people who, if you are giving President Trump the benefit of the doubt, that pendulum has swung the other way. I think there's a lot of demand for transparency right now, and rightfully so, for not only Americans, but it is for Americans, but for the whole world. How could we be the leading nation and not set the standard? How can we allow money unconditionally given to destroy, as you pointed out, women and children indiscriminately? How could we not tie that to moral values of Americans that we all believe in? And it's being rained upon.
I'll tell you what, Amish, especially as they're never done telling us how Christian they are. I mean, I've always thought that the least plausible thing about Donald Trump's persona was that he was in any way a Christian, any way religious. I have never seen or read or heard anything about him which led me to believe that he was a man of God. And then I see him with people speaking in tongues, and he's threatening Nigeria on behalf of the Christians, whilst entertaining Giuliani, who desecrated churches, murdered priests, nuns in the lands where Jesus walked. But the lies are just mounting one upon the other. And I honestly think, Amish, that the revelations today and tomorrow, and presumably a never-ending stream of them now, on the Epstein affair, probably has killed the presidency of Donald Trump in any meaningful sense. Anyway, thanks for the call. Here's some comments. Judy says, if Al-Qaeda is a backstabbing dirtbag, they should feel right at home in the Oval Office. Jack Klugman, great name, says they destroyed one of the oldest societies on earth and the oldest Christian communities on earth. Damascus is one of the oldest continuously lived in cities of the world. Indeed, of fond memory, and I'm afraid it's only a memory now. Raymond Lee says, aren't MI6 running Giuliani like they're running Zelensky? Well, MI6 and the United States empire are one and the same thing. They are twins. And quite often, you're right, as I infer you are implying, it is MI6 and perfidious Albion that is the leading actor in the plot, quite often. ZA or ZA, Lucas Aid, says Saudi Arabia and Turkey installed al-Jolani in Syria. And Sal11 says, I can't believe the Wahhabi Muslims support Golani. Basel is in Michigan. Second call from Michigan this evening on Max Blumenthal's wonderful interview. Go ahead, Basel.
Hey, Mr. Galloway. It's what a pleasure talking to you. I would love to meet you someday. I've been following you for decades. I agree with you. Thank you. I agree with Mr. Blumenthal said, with one minor correction. I think the slaughter is still ongoing, not only against Alawites and Druze, it's also against Christians. He said it's not against Christians. No, it is actually not to the same scale. And I'm not Christian, by the way. But it's still going on against the Christian, but to lesser of a scale. And I don't think the Christian people in the world give a toss, as you always say, about the Syrian Christians, which will be the last of the Mohicans. So that's one correction. The other correction is the Syria that you once visited, the nice neighborhood of Malki, Abu Rumana, and maybe Babtuma or Qassa. This is unfortunately a very small fraction of Syria. The Syria of today, I'm afraid, is replicating Jolani by 100,000 copies, which even if Jolani end up leaving, and I don't think he's going to be leaving anytime soon, probably in years, not in a few months as most expect. But there will be 100,000 of people that would make Jolani looks like a liberal, so to speak. And I'm not so sure about people who are in the decision-making position of the world are aware of this issue. Finally, unfortunately, one of the people asked you about what are the Syrian people. Well, we like it or we don't, just because of the hatred to the corrupt former regime of Assad, as corrupt as it was, but we have country, may have not been a perfect country. There's, yes, corruption, there's oppression, no political freedom, but there was some good about it, education, healthcare, etc. He's selling everything else, but many, if not majority of people, would not mind seeing the whole country fall apart, so just they can see the Assad leave. That's it. If that's what it takes to split the country to pieces, to shatter it to pieces, so what? Just as long as that guy leaves, which I was never a big fan of, but you know, the price that gonna happen, that's gonna, if the cost is losing the whole country, so be it. I just want to add those comments and correction, and thank you so much for taking my call.
Well, I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that you did, and you did so very eloquently, if heartbreakingly. And of course, you may very well be right. I personally believe you are right, but not everyone does. Some people think that Humpty Dumpty can be put together again, but I don't believe Syria can be put together again. I don't believe the Syria that I loved we will ever see again. Two of my sons are half Syrian, have some skin in this game. And my sons ask me, will they ever be able to visit Syria again? And I say, almost certainly not. But almost certainly you would not want to, because you would not find any of the things that made Syria so beautiful, and you will find many things and many people, as you say, who are the opposite of fine, who are the opposite of beautiful. And sectarianism is a thing. I'm not one of these who pretends that sectarian hatred in the Arab world, or even in the Muslim world, in the Muslim diaspora either, is invented by the enemies of the Muslims. The enemies of the Muslims definitely like to encourage it, but it's not hard to encourage it. It's surprisingly easy to make one Muslim hate another Muslim for some marginal or even not so marginal point of doctrine, to the point that they will gladly see and maybe even carry out the slaughter of that person, those people, which of course serves the interests of no Muslims, certainly has no connection whatsoever to the religion of Islam. It is a peculiar anthropological truth that sectarian hatred happens in the Christian world too. Only got to go to the north of Ireland in previous decades and see what that led to amongst two communities, both of whom consider themselves Christian. So it's not an exclusively Muslim thing, but it has been my experience that it is surprisingly easy to make photocopies of Jolani. And I hope it's not 100,000, as you said you think it is. If it is 100,000, then you can kiss Syria goodbye. It will be, as Max Blumenthal so memorably said, Syria will become a Kandahar rather than a jewel of the Orient on the Mediterranean. Basil, thank you for that great call. And now, the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news, it is my good wife Gayatri with the social media roundup. Welcome. Gayatri, what have we got?
So, the Financial Times reported today that the EU is to set up a new intelligence unit under Ursula von der Leyen. This is to improve and collate the use of the information gathered by all the 27 European national spy agencies. This is to rival the CIA and the Mossad. This is to protect the European civilization, as von der Leyen famously said. So instead of more transparency from Belgium, from Brussels, we are going to get another layer of secrecy. This is, of course, not a new concept, but her final stamp on this plan.
It's a joke, though, surely.
No.
I mean, this is, who's that guy that I always say is not James Bond, it's Austin Powers. I mean, she is a female Austin Powers, and she's going to be the head of the European Intelligence Agency. Well, how intelligent is that going to be?
Of course. And of course there will be resistance from the diplomatic spheres of the European Union countries. But this comes, of course, on the back of Trump's position reducing his support for the Ukraine war. So he's backing up, and so that's why she feels the need to step up the game in Europe, in the old continent. I just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into this because I thought this was such a, as you say, I thought this must be a joke. But then I looked into it, and you know that she this year came up with the Readiness 2030 project, which is a military enlargement of the European Union.
The European army, yeah.
Exactly, and they've then, it was actually originally called Rearm Europe, but then she changed the name because she thought maybe Rearm Europe doesn't sound as good. So just call it Readiness 2030. So this is it. So this is to enhance the EU military capabilities with up to 800 billion euros, and which is the biggest rearmament drive since the Cold War. I mean, Europe is...
Europe's doing really well, though, of course.
Yeah,
the economies are booming. They can afford it.
Yes. I mean, everyone is thriving in big cities, small cities, everywhere. So she has, of course, been the president of the European Commission since 2019.
Who elected her?
Who did you? Well, of
did
course.
you vote for her? No, you didn't. Nobody voted for her.
Nobody did. So before that, she was a German defense minister, because although she was born in Brussels, and she was only born in Brussels because her father, before her, also was a European civil servant in its former format. So she's come from a line of serving this
Although
cause.
her grandfather was a Nazi officer.
There you go. There you go. But this is where I'm going to make bookends.
Mind you, all their grandfathers
This is where
were
I'm going to make bookends.
Nazi officers.
This is where I'm going to make bookends, because since she's German, this is my conclusion, born in Brussels, but she is German, and since her presidency, she's reigned supreme over European Union in a very scary way as a German. Okay, all right. And of course, the EU is already a political and economical supranational unit. Her vision goes even further. She says, maybe not my children, but my grandchildren after will see a United States of Europe. So she has grand plans for this continent, and she has been the most proponent and most for more assertive foreign policy of Germany. I mean, this is her as a defense minister then and as a European Commission president now. But may I remind everyone that in 2015, when she was still a German defense minister, she actually, believe it or not, she publicly defended Germany's refusal to supply Ukraine with weapons. She said that it was necessary to remain united within Europe over Ukraine. And she argued that negotiations with Russia, unlike with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, were possible. I mean, on a day like this, I'm saying that negotiations with Russia are possible, but those with the ISIS jihadists not. What happens today, they're in the White House.
There's no negotiations with Russia, and ISIS are in the White House.
They're welcome. So she said, quote, weapon deliveries would be a fire accelerant. So she was cautious and she was aware of the danger of arming Ukraine to defend themselves. Now, this was quoted in the New York Times in 2015. If you click on the link, it's gone.
Oh,
the
really?
page is gone. You can no longer retrieve the original source of it. But she has said this. She has said this. So it's no longer available there, but she has said this.
Wow.
So look how we have turned.
How we've gone so willingly into this good night. We've got a German president of Europe.
Yeah.
Germany invaded France 3 times in 70 years. 1817, 1914, and 1939. And yet we've allowed the rearmament of Germany. We've allowed Germany to boast that it's going to have Europe's biggest army.
Yeah.
We've got a guy who's the Chancellor, whose grandfather was a Nazi officer. We've got von der Leyen, whose grandfather was a Nazi officer. We've got, I mean, are there any of them whose grandfathers were not Nazi officers? And they are funding and arming Ukrainian Nazis with swastikas on their tunics, with SS symbols on their tunics,
openly.
Swastikas tattooed on their bodies. I mean, how did we get to the stage where we're supposed to love Germany and hate Russia? Supposed to love Japan and hate China? Is there anyone with a historical memory out there? That's what I ask myself.
No.
Now look, we're 5 minutes after time.
Yeah.
Have you got anything
no,
else? Or?
just comment. Go and take me for chips, please.
Well, my tummy is rumbling. That's what I was about to say.
Yes.
So
let's go.
Will you go for chips?
Let's go, please.
We're going for chips. It's been marvellous. Thanks for joining us on the Mother of All Talk Shows. We'll be back again, God willing, on Sunday with the Mother of All Talk Shows, 500th edition. 500th edition on Sunday. It's going to be quite a party, I promise.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.